Hi, my name is Dawson Church. I'm the author of several award-winning science books, including The Genie in Your Genes and Bliss Brain. And I want to share with you why today is the most exciting period in history to be alive. I know it's easy to look out there at the landscape of the news and look at all the poverty, the famine, the war, all the things that are going wrong in the world, and to imagine that the world is in really bad shape. And I don't in any way want to minimize the seriousness of global warming, species extinction, any of the other challenges facing us today. But if that's the only lens through which you see reality, you are completely missing the big picture and all the amazing things that are going on now in our world. I'm a scientist, I'm an empiricist, I deal with data and facts. And when you look at the actual facts where we are, you realize that today really is the most exciting time to be alive. We're in the middle of a huge renaissance in human well-being, and things are getting better by almost every measure imaginable. I'm going to take a few statistics from my book, Bliss Brain, and share those with you. And bear these in mind as we zoom out from the bad headlines every day into the reality picture of where the trends are in our world today. Here are some of the facts that I list. I had to pick from about 400 research studies, and I listed about 20 of them in Bliss Brain, and this is what they show us. They show us that the average person in the world, the average global citizen, is 3 times as wealthy as he or she was in 1980. In just 40 years, global wealth has tripled. How about health? Lifespan. We are so much healthier today that our lifespan has doubled in the last century. We are infinitely better off in many measures of material well-being and also physical well-being. How about psychological well-being? Literacy has declined, illiteracy has declined by more than half since 1970 worldwide. And another important marker, the number of people living in extreme poverty, that's dropped by more than half since 1970. Also, wars and violence. We look at the 20th century with its horrendous wars. We look at the wars we've had already now in the 21st century. But even with the slaughter of World War I and World War II, fewer people died in combat and non-combatants in the 20th century than died in the previous century between 1800 and 1900. We forget about those old wars, the Napoleonic Wars, the world wars of the 1700s and 1800s, the Franco-Prussian War, the American Civil War. So a higher percentage of the population died between 1800 and 1900 than in the 20th century. We go back another 100 years from 1700 to 1800, more people died than in the subsequent century. And we find that the global death rate in conflict has been decreasing steadily for the last 1,000 years, century by century. Wars between great powers have been diminishing steadily over the last century. So we often overlook all these things. I, for one, am really distressed by things like when you see news stories, for example, about burning the Amazon, cutting out the lungs of the earth, as one writer called it. And I know, looking at the data, that deforestation of the Amazon has dropped by 80% since 2000. So it's bad, it's unforgivable, and yet there's good news there as well when you zoom out to the larger picture. Let's now look at another really interesting statistic, and that's Google searches. Now, Google compiles data on what people are searching for. How about people searching for homophobic, racist words? How about people searching for racist jokes, sexist jokes, homophobic slurs, people typing those into their search engines? Do you know how much those have declined in the last decade? 80%. 80%. People are just not interested in those things the way they were a decade ago. And when Google looks at the zip codes from which those come, the mostly communities of very old white men. So old white men are searching for those things, but they'll soon be dead. And so the number's going to drop even more. So there are all these positive statistics about our world as a whole. And then on the positive side, the number of people making a commitment to their spiritual well-being is exploding. In Bliss Brain, I analyzed the percentage of the population who were meditating or involved in spiritual pursuits. And there's data for this dating in the US from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and onward. And we find the number is pretty steady at 1%. So 99% of people don't focus on their connection with a higher power. 1% of people do. But something happened after 2000. The number began to rise. And by 2004, the percentage was 4% of the US population, and about the same number in Europe were meditating, were focused on their spiritual growth. Then I thought, let's go back and see how many there were in 1800, 1700. And it was very interesting. There were figures available from England in 1100, from Germany and France in 1300, from India and China around the same time. And guess what the number was? 1%. It looks like wherever in the world you look, whatever period you look at, roughly 1% of people is focused on spiritual growth. The rest are being the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, doing their thing and not caring very much. But by 2004, it had quadrupled to 4%. And the number today, the newest data from the Centers for Disease Control in the US, is that close to 20% of people are meditating and focusing on their spiritual well-being. This is producing huge changes in society, in the way we see social issues, in compassion, in our treatment of people who are sick and poor. The amount that government spent on those social safety nets in 1900 was about 2% of government spending. Now it's about 22% of government spending. We're just far more compassionate now than we were a century ago, and we're backing it up with our money. So in all kinds of ways, human beings are flourishing. We're becoming more compassionate, we're becoming more aware of our own spiritual potential, and we're unlocking that ability. One of my dear friends, Gene Houston, calls this jump time. We're in the middle of this huge shift, and that meditation, that focus on spiritual growth, those people who are becoming one with their higher power and then living an inner directed life is increasing. So I urge you to be part of this change. Live that inner directed life. There are plenty of reasons why you can be depressed, anxious, miserable, stressed out there. When you learn to tune in, to be in your heart, live from your heart, when you meditate each morning, when you tune into your higher power, when you're one with the all it is, you leave what I call the realm of local mind, what's happening here locally all around me, and you move like St. Francis, like Rumi, like Carlos Castaneda, Don Juan, like St. Teresa, like all these great figures throughout history. You move into non-local mind. You become one with the all that is, and then you live an inner directed life. You are one with the all that is, and that inspiration, that wisdom is now shaping your outside world. It also produces dramatic changes to your work life, your family life, your community life. In one study done by the Defense Research Agency in the US, they found that people in these states, these elevated states, when they go back and they try and focus on solving complex problems, your ability to solve complex problems goes up by 500% when you're in those states. Another study, 10-year study by the McKinsey Consulting Group, found that workplace productivity grew by 500% when you do that. Another study by Northwestern University found that creativity in these states grows, it doubles, grows by over 200%. So now you're spending time inner directed, you're in those states, you're meditating, you're doing yoga, you're entering Bliss Brain, You get to work, you're with your team, with your family, you're focused on solving complex problems. You're 5 times as good at doing that. You're twice as creative, you're much more productive. Now you're bringing all that inner directed inspiration to your outer work. So you, my dear friend, are part of this global community of people who are focused on your growth and who are doing this and who are making the world a much better place. Are our problems real? Absolutely. Climate change is real. Species extinction is real. Wealth inequalities are real. Sexism, racism, all these are problems, and I'm not minimizing them. But when we have 5 times the problem-solving ability, twice the creativity, 5 times the productivity, we're much more likely as a human species to solve those pressing problems. And I am a complete optimist. I believe we will. Doesn't mean we'll solve absolutely all of them in my lifetime. Probably not, but there are amazing solutions out there when you start looking for them. So I invite you to live that inner directed life. Tune in to your inner world. Connect with your higher power. I have a free course called 21-Day Walk with Your Higher Power. Take the course, connect with your higher power, live from that connection with your higher power. Tune into non-local mind, non-local reality. Listen to the news of the universe. Be part of jump time. Be part of this huge social shift happening right now. It is changing our world. It is changing for the better. And this truly, of all the periods in history, is the most remarkably wonderful time to be alive. Thanks for being together with me in this magnificent adventure.